the real revelation is that it's always been this bad. It's just that they've done it and railroaded people who didn't have the bullhorns of Donald Trump. And so it's been going on for a long time, maybe not quite as politically motivated, but the criminal justice system has been railroading people. The justice system has been railroading people for years. We've just now seen how bad it is.
Yeah, but I think the last couple of decades, as the kind of whole Rockefeller WEF axis is now coming to fruition, you know, the last couple of decades is getting worse and worse. The Clintons, Obama.
It's getting more
in your face.
Brazen.
Absolutely brazen. It is nuts.
Hey guys, happy Monday, and I have another short interview from Rebel Capitalist Live in Orlando last week, and it is Viva Frei, and he's a fascinating guy. So a short interview. We cover the whole current Trump thing. We cover Alex Jones. We cover some of the madness of the past 4 years, and he's got great insights, lovely man, and I know you'll really enjoy. Here we go.
I'm here in the fantastic Rebel Capitalist Live in Orlando, and I've met up with someone who I was not familiar with, but George Gammon introduced me and said, you got to talk to Viva Frei, which I believe is German.
You're rolling the R like a Frenchman now. Yeah. Viva Frei. Viva Frei. David Freiheit is my full name. Freiheit means verbatim freedom in German.
Excellent. So freedom in German. How appropriate.
I was a lawyer once upon a time, and it was a good name for a lawyer.
Excellent. And you developed your channel, I suppose, in getting the messages out. And George said, by the way, you speak very much along the lines as I've spoken, but more from a Canadian-American perspective. I'm more Europe.
It's weird. I started off making random stupid videos. Like I've had a channel. It'll be 10 years in November since my first viral video, which was of a squirrel carrying a GoPro up a tree, and then it dropped the GoPro from the tree. Because I tied a piece of bread to a GoPro, and then it carried it up a tree. The video got 5 million views in 1 week. This was back when you could actually go viral organically. And then I started messing around on YouTube. I would do fishing videos, cooking videos. I was still a practicing lawyer, so I didn't want to do anything that would make a judge look at me weird on a Monday.
You had to be clean.
Not even politically. Like, I did a video once, I used to do a bunch of drone stuff. So I caught a fish with a drone. I waxed my legs with a drone. So I made this concoction where I put wax strips on my leg and tied a little hole, reinforced it, had a DJI Phantom, and then I zipped the thing off and it pulled off the strip and waxed my leg. It was a science experiment.
Excellent.
But then, a judge said something about having watched some of my videos when I was practicing law, and I was like, okay, I better, not do anything too discreditingly stupid.
Too zany, I guess.
Too zany. So, but then, I am who I am, and it got zanier and zanier, and at one point I actually just wound down my law practice and started doing this and marketing full time. And what ended up happening is I just sort of turned the channel into a law channel at one point, where I was doing prepping a witness, day in the life of a lawyer. And everyone's like, oh, that's cool, make more of those, it's interesting what you do. And then I started doing more of those, like sort of natural, just what it's like to be a lawyer. And then that's what the channel sort of started to niche down on. And then 2018, I did an analysis of an Alex Jones deposition breakdown, which went quasi-viral as far as law videos go. Then it got stricken down from YouTube for violating the terms of service for hate speech. Bullshit. I mean, it's bullshit.
Oh, I know, but in 18, because I'm only familiar with YouTube censorship primarily since COVID.
This is my life makes a lot more sense backwards, but I just started doing random legal analysis. And when I did that Alex Jones video, I was like, oh, cool, people like this. It got 250,000 views. And then it got removed from YouTube. I got a strike, and I'm like, what the hell? It says violating the terms of service for hate speech. The video was me analyzing the deposition of Alex Jones. And I would show clips, and I'd say what the lawyer did right and what the lawyer did wrong. The ultimate irony of all of this and how life is totally circular, the lawyer in the video who I never saw was Robert Barnes. He's the Robert Barnes who spoke today, who's my partner now. We do our Sunday show, and we have a community together. He was the lawyer, and I remember at one point in the video, the lawyer who was the examining attorney says, I love your work, Mr. Barnes. Never put it together until like 2 years later. But then I discovered YouTube censorship. And then I started making, I had made a playlist at one point called YouTube Chicanery. I did a video on Epstein back in the day, demonetized. I was like, why is it demonetized? And I did videos on some subject matter that would just get demonetized, others. And so I discovered the corruption or the politics of YouTube. And then when COVID hit, I reached another plateau on the internet. On YouTube, I started talking about all the madness, trying to make sense of the law, trying to make sense of the Quarantine Act, and then met Robert Barnes, did a live stream with Robert Barnes, and then we started doing weekly shows because people were just going nuts, locked down, couldn't understand anything, and then it blossomed into what we have now. A massive, beautiful community.
Excellent, yeah. And would you believe I met Robert for the first time just this morning, and I interviewed him in the exact same spot that you are sitting.
He's an encyclopedia.
He's on fire.
It's amazing. When you watch him present, like you saw him on stage, he navigates rooms of knowledge in his brain as he's talking and just goes from one room to the next and gets the subjects. It's amazing. And I've known him now for years, and
he's a great guy, and he spoke so eloquently right here. And I'll put the link down below, guys, by the way, to that interview, for sure. And we went through Alex Jones. I said, let's go through the Alex Jones story briefly first. And then he got into the cases against the FDA and the Fed. But I discovered only a few months ago with Tucker Carlson interview, or no, it was on Twitter Spaces. Alex Jones was back on Twitter. It might have been with Musk or maybe Carlson. But he told a story. And I had always assumed, even though I know the world is utterly corrupt and there was corruption against him, I knew that for a fact. But I assumed he had a lot of guilt all the same, because he's a bit of a crazy guy. But when he told the story what happened, I was kind of stunned. He was completely stitched up. They reached back into the past simply to hit him because he was a problem.
The stigma around Alex Jones is it's madness. I mean, it shows you how manipulative and how brainwashing the media can be. Yeah. When I analyzed the deposition in 2018, and I was like, oh God, do I do this? He's such a toxic person. He's so bad. I mean, I knew friends and family that I was like, they might not talk to me just by virtue of me doing that. And the amazing thing is, I did the video, and then I started noticing, I get some weird comments in the chat, like conspiratorial beyond Alex Jones, because I had no idea that there's I call them troll armies, but I think they're probably agents or confidential human sources. I think it's intelligence following him around, and then they go and they drop crazy comments to try to discredit anybody touching Alex Jones. The guy is as sincere and nice of a person as you can possibly imagine. And what they did to slander him and defame him, he said a couple of stupid things, which he apologized profusely for, but they sued him for intentional infliction of emotional distress in Connecticut, in Texas. There are people out there who think Alex Jones was responsible for the Sandy Hook killings.
No, it's insane.
But it's insane what they've done to him, and $1.5 billion in damages, default judgments, default verdicts where he couldn't even defend himself. He couldn't say, I apologized and I admitted that I made a mistake.
Because it was a stitch-up, so they could not let him testify, because he would simply just tell the truth and the whole case would be problematic.
When people had watched the trial, which they thought was a trial, but it was actually only a trial on the damages because he had already been defaulted into liability, everyone's like, how was he found liable? And that is what they said after watching the hearing to establish the quantum of the damages, because they never had a hearing on the substance, on the merits.
Yeah, Robert said that, and I didn't want to stop his flow, but it can't possibly be legal to de facto say he's guilty without any real trial process. He could not speak.
It's beyond what you can imagine. So I'm a non-practicing attorney now, or I'm no longer licensed. I was licensed in Quebec. We don't have the same system up in Canada. We don't get ludicrous billion-dollar judgments. But to default someone, not just out of a defense, but into liability, because it's a very, very nuanced distinction people have to appreciate it. It's not like saying you've been so bad you don't get to defend, because in the normal run of things, the plaintiff still has to prove their case. You don't get to default someone into a finding of liability where the plaintiffs no longer even have to show their case. And in Sandy Hook, in the defamation case, there was issues of, there were legal issues, statute of limitations, public figure issues, actual malice issues. They said Alex Jones defaulted on discovery obligations that he didn't, and they didn't just say you no longer get to defend. They said the plaintiffs no longer even have to prove liability. Even worse. And so the only hearing that people saw, or the trial that people saw, was a trial to establish the quantum, because the finding of liability was defaulted into by two corrupt judges. Yep.
Now, presumably, even though it's 100% corrupt, what you describe, and quite insane, quite frankly, 1,000, yeah. I'm a stickler, you see. 100 is 100 to me. I know Americans and Canadians all go 150, but no, all jokes aside, it's absolutely corrupt. but they did have some mechanism to claim it to be within the law. I'm just wondering, what was the mechanism where you could even ever do that? Because you're entitled to a jury of your peers, you're entitled to defend yourself.
Even, like, imagine if he hadn't showed up, he hadn't appeared. You wouldn't get a default liability. You just say, okay, there's no defendant, prove your case. Because the example, the hypothetical that I say is, look, I sue someone 20 years after the contract, or 20 years after the act. They don't show up. Well, I don't win. I say, okay, well, I have to prove my case. And if the judge says, well, when did this happen? 20 years ago. Well, you're time barred. And I don't need a defendant to be there in order for my claim to be legally time barred.
But even if you weren't time barred, in that instance, even if the person didn't turn up, the judge, I suppose, would have to come to a finding that the person was evading turning up, he was in Nicaragua.
You wouldn't even have to do that. Just imagine they don't show up for whatever the reason, bad faith or good faith. Well, okay, fine. Plaintiff, go, make your case. Where's your evidence? Show me the contract. Show me the damages are a second step. It was, I mean, we've now seen these legal loopholes or legal corruption. We've seen it with Donald Trump or Steve Bannon.
That was the worst day for America
ever. We're seeing it everywhere where, like, they use technicalities under the law to fix it in as much as humanly possible. So in the Trump New York Engeron case, where he was found liable in order to, $500 million for allegedly overinflating the value of his assets. Well, they gagged him in that trial. They didn't deny him a trial by jury, they just didn't provide one to him under some rule of procedure that disgorgement cases can be heard by a judge and not by a jury, so you could control the outcome. The judge in the case gagged him, said he couldn't say certain things, stripped him of certain defenses, so you basically orchestrate an outcome. They did it with Steve Bannon, they did it with Alex Jones. I'm trying to think of other prominent cases now. But it's like, it's judicial corruption of the highest order, which nobody cared about when it was Alex Jones, because everybody thought they hated Alex Jones already, and now they're seeing it with Donald Trump. And they're saying, oh my goodness, people are like finally waking up, look how bad it's gotten. The real revelation is that it's always been this bad, it's just that they've done it and railroaded people who didn't have the bullhorns of Donald Trump. And so it's been going on for a long time, maybe not quite as politically motivated, but the criminal justice system has been railroading people. The justice system has been railroading people for years. We've just now seen how bad it is.
Yeah, but I think the last couple of decades, as the kind of whole Rockefeller WEF axis is now coming to fruition, the last couple of decades is getting worse and worse. And the Clintons, Obama.
It's getting more
in your face.
Brazen.
Absolutely brazen. It is nuts. So you went out, and at some point, of course, you had to drop the legal thing because you were becoming outspoken on COVID, which is verboten.
I was barely practicing then, but I still had a few clients who didn't mind my. I never even wanted to get political. My channel was never political. It wasn't even legal, but or law based. But and I remember it's like I never liked discussing politics because you never really convince anybody. You get people angry. But when they start locking you in your house and people are like, how could they do this? They're like, oh, we've got a quarantine act. And the Quarantine Act allows them to isolate suspected vectors of illness. And the Quarantine Act can allow fines of $250,000. It's like, we have a Quarantine Act. And then you explain the law. And then at some point, I got pissed off at the world that I saw around me. It's like, I'm going to share my opinion, what I think of this while explaining it. But no, so I had my law license up until... what year is it? 2020. I think it was only recently that it's called, what's the word? Willful relinquishment or whatever, abandoning it. Because I had it up in Quebec. I live in Florida. I had no need for it. I was paying $3,000 a year so that idiots can file anonymous ethics complaints because they don't like tweets that I put out insulting Justin Trudeau. It's wild. They use it like a weapon.
And that censorship you saw in 18, I think basically, absolutely, there's bots and intelligence people all over the place.
Question.
And I know George himself in an interview with me, we were very careful. We referred to cerveza sickness, didn't say the C word. I went through a root cause diagram, an engineering tool to show all the strategies of, the order, such as it is. And it was clean. It did not breach any YouTube guidelines, but it breached the unspoken ones. And I think what happens when it got 130k views very quickly, more than his normal, then it was demonetized. And essentially what happens, it draws the attention of the State Department or whoever, and they contact Google, and Google just demonetizes it.
There's no question, and when they demonetize it, it kills the reach, because why would they promote a video that they can't monetize? It's soft censorship. And they did it with the Epstein story, when Epstein was breaking, and his suicide. anybody who covered it critically or objectively, as I would say, demonetized. And it would deter anybody. I mean, I still did it, and I would just put out another video to make up for the one that got demonetized. But lo and behold, NBC, mainstream media, they put out fluff pieces whitewashing it. They're fully monetized, ads before, during, and after. It's the corruption is amazing, and I do believe a lot of these. I do believe there's agents in the chat putting out hyperbolic rhetoric, putting out incitement to violence.
All caps. I get these replies, and I just know they're not really followers.
Well, all caps, it could be an old person who can't see the
It can be, but the nature of them, I get some, and then a load of quasi-religious kind of lunatic fervor replies, and I'm thinking, I just noticed that trend. I think that's, and on Twitter you get the porn bots. Like you put out a controversial thing on UNWEF or whatever, the real stuff, and suddenly you have 3 or 4 porn bots.
There's no question about that, and I believe that the reason for that is also some sort of algorithmic suppression, because once you start getting those porn bots in, it's either killing the reach or it's an indication that the reach has been killed.
Yeah,
I've noticed
and
that
they like your post as well. I didn't realize that, but a couple of people, when I asked this on Twitter, they said, yes, watch out as well. These porn bots like your post.
Well, the worst
to
thing
connect
is
themselves.
If Elon is watching, like some of these, they put in the graphic images, and I'm just scrolling through replies, and I see like people think I'm surfing for porn on my phone. No, but the ones that drive me nuts and that are the biggest red flags are people who say promote violence, like put a bullet somewhere. I say A, reported, and B, that's fed behavior, because I'd say maybe it's the no true Scotsman fallacy, where I say like nobody who's truly a patriot, capital P, conservative is going to be doing that, because even if you believe it, it's a stupid tactic. And I say anybody doing it, I presume they're a Fed, and I will call them a Fed, and then I'll report it.
Yeah, report and block. I always go to the bottom.
I don't block. I've never blocked a soul on Twitter, not even the porn bots.
Right. Well, I don't block either generally, but these are.
But no, because people, you have to. But my neurotic fear is blocking someone who is a good faith misunderstanding, and then they say, "Oh, unblock me," and I don't want to. So the porn bots I report, and they typically get taken down quickly. But if it's someone who's just, I mute.
Someone off the wall, yeah, maybe not. But I'm talking about the one nudes in bio. That are just straight porn bots.
They might just.
They're not saying anything really except nude in bio. And occasionally I looked, but very rarely.
Oh no, I look to see if they're AI, because you can tell based on the fingers and some body parts, not those body parts, but I'm convinced that it's AI, and they all tend to refer back to the same European number. So I think it's sort of like one entity doing it and really ruining the navigability in public.
That's it. Well, but for Twitter coders, it should be easy enough to hit a lot of those, because they even use the same phrases.
I would presume they can see graphic naked bodies, and that's easy enough to pick up.
And even if they don't have those, I mean, just the phrase nudes in bio, I've seen so many times now. You could just make that phrase one that automatically. I don't want to get into like conspiratorial reasons for which there might not have an incentive to do it. Maybe it's more traffic and people can say the numbers are better. All that commercial. But anyway, no, not to worry. So where do you think we're going? That's the best way to, because we're doing shorts here, like 15, 20 minutes. But where we're going, I'm cautiously positive. 2 years ago, I kind of had to be disingenuous, and because I always wanted to tell people, we just need to keep fighting, get awareness out, live the correct way, we'll beat this. But I really wondered, were we in serious trouble 2 years ago? Now, however, I'm cautiously optimistic, genuinely. The awareness is growing massively.
There feels to be a shift in the zeitgeist.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm accused of being overly optimistic despite being wildly cynical. Where are we going? I mean, there's paths. They are going to try to jail Trump, and I think they're going to try to get increasingly provocative in order to provoke potentially January 6 2.0. I've got a very, very dark, sinister theory that, should I go into it?
Yeah, it's fine.
This is not a case of a fear hiding a wish. This is just, if you're writing a book and you want to make it, super suspenseful, that they don't want Biden on the ticket. My theory is that everybody knows Biden is bad and they want him off the ticket, but how do you remove him off the ticket and put someone there who people would vote for? And the very dark fear of mine is that they want to either provoke someone to do something to Biden because of this wild weaponization of the system, and then if it happens, good, bad news for them, they can replace Biden with a Newsom or a Kamala Harris, who is detested, but say at least they'll have a more sympathetic angle if someone is removed from the ticket as a result of some political violence. My other concern is that they are trying to incite political violence against Trump, or the next Rubicon for them to cross, because they've crossed every single Rubicon. There's only one left. But the more realistic, life sometimes is a little more boring than it could be. They've basically clinched Trump getting elected with this conviction. I think anybody with half a brain who is not an Operation Mockingbird media asset sees it that way. And I think they've just gotten him elected, and I think they've really made people understand that if you have to vote for Trump, even if you don't like him, because it's not a vote for a person anymore, it's a vote against the absolute weaponization of the justice system and the end of democracy. Because if they succeed in doing this with Trump, it's no longer a democracy.
That's a Rubicon beyond Rubicons, because if they get away with that, well, then your children will be next. No question about it. And funny, just harking back, I thought in COVID back in the summer of 2020, I remember we had an Irish medical group, around 30 doctors and surgeons, and I was in it, and we were COVID Recovery Ireland, and we were doing white papers and sending them to all the politicians to try and get it home that this lockdown is insane. And we had all the data, it was a clear 100% proof. And the summer came and I said, like Art of War, Chung Tzu, we have the terrain until November, because we know it's seasonal. They deny it's seasonal. We know it's seasonal. We know the hospitals and ICUs are empty until October, November. We own the terrain now. They have no fear porn, no death porn, no ICU. And then they did the biggest stroke of genius of all of the program. All across Europe simultaneously from the very top, and no one to this day knows who pulled it. But someone pulled it very high up. Mandatory masks with prison sentences and fines simultaneous to the rollout. They came with 1-year prison sentences and big fines. They didn't just say, hey, we want you to wear masks, even though the hospitals are empty. The ICUs are empty.
But they weren't even showing the videos of the empty hospitals.
No, they didn't have them. They just said, you're wearing masks. And I said to myself at that time, if the people go with this, we are in serious trouble, and we were. If they didn't get the mask then, the rest couldn't happen. It was genius though. It was genius to say, let's put them all in masks, and then we'll create a feeling of pandemia, and we'll get to the winter. Because if the people walk away now for 4 months, we'll never get them back. It was genius.
It was it was genius, diabolical.
Oh, diabolical,
and we're going to see in 20 years' time the lasting impacts of long-term masking.
Oh, God, yes.
We're starting to see it now, and I sounded crazy when I was talking about it 2 years ago. In Quebec, we had an incident of potentially toxic masks that were given to daycare kids and daycare teachers. Tens of thousands of them. Bought from China, they had graphene particles in them. They recalled them. Yeah. But now we're finding plastics in people's lungs. We're finding mask mouth, mask knee. There's another one, dental issues because increased cavities.
Oh yeah, my daughter got a reaction, and it was funny because it wasn't that common to get a severe skin reaction, but she got a mask-shaped red rash, and it got so severe she had to go on antibiotics for a long period. And I remember thinking, it's actually come to my house, this insanity. I mean, I was very angry. The masks were disgusting. Babies crying with masks on them.
No,
it's enough to make you. They are.
It's enough to make you angry. And when I do think about it and go back and rewatch video from the time, it makes me. It re-traumatizes. But those of us with an open mind learned the important lessons, and we will not soon forget them.
Absolutely, and Stoicism, even though it makes me angry, and I almost indulge myself in a bit of anger. I kind of earned it. But you're right, it's not productive. So Stoicism, no matter what happens, no matter where we end up, the warrior must always fight like he is already dead. There's no point worrying about how bad things are or how bad they might get. We always just know that we do what we can to prevent it, and we'll always look back and say we did what we could.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Viva.
Great.
Thank you.
So guys, that'll do it. As always, huge thanks to the people who support me. Very important in this world of legacy media madness that we're all exposed to and is bringing us to very bad places. So anyone else who can hop on PayPal or Patreon, I do monthly Zooms and vlogs, etc. for the various tiers. Really appreciate that if you can help out a little, because who else is gonna do it? Thank you.